All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Please note today's session is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Thank you so much. On behalf of the National Cancer Institute, I wish to welcome everyone to today's webinar on the Consortium for Cancer Implementation Science Initial Call for Proposals to Support Development of Public Goods. Before we get started, a few brief words about logistics. Janine, if you could go to the next slide, please. All lines are in listen-only mode. We ask that if you are not already on mute, to please keep your phone on mute for the duration of today's presentation. As I mentioned, this session is being recorded, and muting all lines will avoid any background noise. We encourage questions and comments, and I know a few of you submitted them during the registration process. Questions can be submitted today by using the Q&A feature on the right side of your screen. Type your question into the provided Q&A field and hit submit. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during the call and select all panelists. You may need to activate the appropriate menu by using the menu options at the bottom of your screen. And lastly, I'd like to recommend by going to the View panel up at the left-hand corner of your screen and selecting Hide Non-Participant Videos, and then that way you'll be able to focus on those presenters. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Cindy Vincent.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this funding opportunity webinar that we are just really excited about. And we are recording this because we want to make sure that anyone who is interested in this is able to access this webinar. We understand we put the call out for this webinar a couple weeks ago, so it's pretty short turnaround, but I know that there will be many people that are interested in this. So this is just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering. We really hope to spend the majority of our time answering your questions. So we'll be providing some background, but we're going to go into details as well on the call for proposals, what we're looking for, the mechanism that we're using, which is a personal services contract, what the application process will be, and how you actually submit a proposal. And we also have some resources. These slides and the presentation will be made available on the consortium's website. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, I'm going to jump in with the background. So for those of you who are new to this and may have received this invitation, the Consortium for Cancer Implementation Science used to be called the Implementation Science Consortium for Cancer. We recently we changed the name because it was confusing to have an Implementation Science Consortium in Cancer when we also have the Implementation Science Centers for Cancer Control. So the new consortium is the old consortium, just with a new name, and we've got a new logo. The consortium was launched in 2019, and it has grown from the first year to the second year. First year, we actually held this meeting in person. And last year, the consortium met virtually. It's important to know that the consortium is actually designed to be a working consortium. It's not a meeting that we hold just to provide education and for people to share their research, but it's designed to move the field of implementation science in cancer forward. And it has a number of different action groups. And those action groups are highlighted in the call for proposals. Many of you hopefully have gone to the call for proposals and you have seen what the different action groups are. And I'm happy to answer questions about that as we move forward. And we also encourage anyone who's interested, regardless of whether they apply for this funding opportunity, to register for the upcoming consortium meeting, which is going to be held October 6th through 7th. And you can do so on our website that's noted here. Please go to the next slide. So here we've outlined what the objectives for the consortium are in general. So the goal of the consortium is really to foster communication among everyone that's engaged in implementation science across the cancer continuum. And this is not just for researchers, but to encourage communications between researchers and practitioners around what is needed to move implementation science forward across the cancer continuum. The consortium is also designed to really identify and develop solutions to theoretical, methodological, and empirical challenges in implementation science in cancer. And ultimately, we want to have collaborative projects that come out of the different action groups, fill the gaps in implementation science, and would move our work beyond the work of a single study. So you can see this is very action oriented. We are looking for people to help move the field forward, and we're looking for both researchers and practitioners to engage in this. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So there are a number of resources that are available where you can learn more about the consortium. We have a link on our website to the previous 2 meetings, and on those different sites that are noted here, the 2020 and the 2019 meetings, you can go in and read what occurred during those meetings. And most importantly from this, you can also find out what each of the 8 action groups are focusing on. So in 2020, I don't have it written down, so I apologize if I don't remember all of them. We had action groups that focused on health equity, community engagement, global health, multi-level interventions. Gosh, I'm blanking on all of them. I'll pull them up and we'll post them in the chat. But we have all of these action groups that actually have plans that they're moving forward right now. And those action groups have actually been communicating in a Slack channel. So if you're interested in learning more about what they're doing or connecting with an action group, you can just email the consortium website or the consortium email and ask for access to the Slack site, and you can learn more about each of the different action groups. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. As I mentioned, here's where the action groups are. Every year we post the action group summary or the meeting summary on the website, and these are found on the website. And here are the action groups that we held last year. So it was community participation, technology, context and equity, implementation of complex multi-level interventions, policy, learning healthcare systems, study designs, and global health. So those are the different action groups that created priorities for what they wanted to work on for the coming year. And that is what we're really looking to move forward. We are also open to any action items that were recommended from the previous year. And many of these action groups continue from the first year, but there are some action groups that did not. We had health economics as an action group in 2019, for example. So it's important when you're thinking about the funding opportunity and any proposal that comes forward, that the proposals align with what these action groups had identified and what has evolved within these action groups since October of last year. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So it's important to know this is the first time that we have put out a call for proposals for anything like this. So I can't share with you what other people have done in the past. What we are really trying to do with these calls for proposal is to find ways to support the work of the action groups. And we want to support them in the development of publicly available resources and tools and products that they have identified, which is the goal of those action groups. Additionally, we really want to use this opportunity to expand the reach to people that haven't traditionally received funding in implementation science. So people that are new to implementation science, and also organizations that, if they are at organizations that haven't traditionally had funding in implementation science. We're really trying to expand the reach of implementation science in cancer across the US. So we've opened this up so that individuals, and it's not organizations, individuals can apply for incentives to support small projects that do not exceed $20,000 for 1 year. They can be less, the time period can be less. We encourage people to think about collaborating, but for any project, the total would be 20,000. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn over details around the application process to Janine Clay.
Thanks, Cindy. So let's talk about the details. Specifically, what are the personal service contracts? These are contracts made to individuals, like Cindy noted, as opposed to institutions or groups of people working together. So awardees will develop publicly available tools, resources, and products. So this really is the end product we're hoping you achieve if you do apply for the award. And these final tools, resources, and products would then be deliverables to ICF. So they're something that need to be completed in full by the end of the project. And so awardees will go through a process of these personal service contracts, which we'll also call PSCs. What are the application requirements that you need to know about? Individuals, we're looking for those that are actively engaged with a CCIS action group currently, and the project, like Cindy also shared, must be a current priority of each action group or of one of the action groups. So again, we're focusing on individuals who will apply. So one individual could receive a PSC. And we are also here in the requirements have linked applications for individuals working collaboratively on an action group public good are allowed. But again, the combined applications cannot exceed $20,000. And as Cindy shared, we're giving a preference to those who are early investigators, and we'll share more details about this in the future slides. Some of the other requirements, we are acknowledging fellows, graduate students, and practitioners who are eligible to apply. How long is the project period for? It's for a year. However, we're certainly encouraging shorter timelines for completion. Other requirements include federal employees. We are not allowing federal employees to apply or international applicants at this time. And lastly, recipients must participate in the annual CCIS meeting and share the outcomes of the project during the action group meeting in the subsequent year. So that is also a requirement for the award. Now we'll spend a few minutes talking about the criteria. What are we going to be taking into account when we review applications? The applications open at the end of this month, and so we've got some criteria here on the slide. The first is that an individual must describe how the project supports the work of a specific action group, and this is 50 points. Not only the work of the action group, but the priority action items identified by that action group. So that's important to include in your application. Next, the second criteria is to really describe the projects that you have in mind and include a lot of details here about the work you're hoping to accomplish, the interim milestones associated with the project, and how that maps back to achieving that final deliverable, right? That product, that good, or that service that you'll deliver at the end. The third criteria here is got a lot of detail, so let's break this down. Qualifications for individuals requesting funding must align with the specific work that will be done. Individuals can't have current IS funding by NIH, so that's important to know. And as stated, new investigators and practitioners who are interested in working in the field of IS are encouraged to apply and must have an appropriate mentoring plan. So that's also important because that line item is 25 points as well. And we've also included two important notes at the bottom of the slide. There's additional bonus points included for individuals, from organizations that don't have active NIH funding for implementation science. That's bonus points will go to those. And there will also be preference given to early career investigators. This could include postdoctorate fellows. So just keep that in mind as you're considering this, and this is how we will grade the applications. The big question is, how do I submit? We will collect all the submissions through the CCIS website that's live now. You can start to see the requirements that we are talking about today on the website, and the portal itself to submit will open July 29th. So by the end of the month, you'll see the application portal open, and then it'll close on September 2nd. Some important dates to keep in mind is what we just talked about. July 29th is the submission date open, and then it closes on September 2nd. And we are planning to award these by October 1, so it will be a short turnaround. We encourage everyone to start the process early and certainly use the Q&A shared on this webinar to inform your planning. And please do read the call for proposals and eligibility requirements very carefully. And we welcome any questions or comments, of course, on this call. And what are the resources available for anyone considering or applying? Like Cindy noted, we'll share the webinar today and an FAQs page that'll go live on the website soon so that we can answer any questions that way. And you are also more than welcome to contact the consortium team at the email account here, ccis@icf.com. So we'll field any questions that way. And we will stop here and move into a Q&A time to take any questions or comments about the application, the personal service contracts, and any other things that might have come up.
Thanks, Janine. I think that's great. I mean, we told you we wanted to keep it short because we want to answer your questions. So now's the time. And Jennifer is going to help moderate this.
Thank you, Janine and Cindy, on a great overview of the consortium and the call for proposals. Before we dive into some of the questions that we've received, I do want to introduce two other panelists that have joined us, David Chambers from DCCPS and Brandon Kendrick from ICF are also on the line to help answer questions that we received today. So we'll start off with a few that I know were submitted during the registration process. And I know we answered quite a few of these, but just to kind of reiterate some of those points and drive them home. We did drop some links in today regarding the call for proposals in the past consortiums where you can find a lot of the resources. So with that, I would like to know more about the needed tools and resources the action groups have identified, and the application info format and sections, the eligibility and review criteria.
All right, so thank you, Jennifer. You know, I think a lot of the application review criteria and the format questions were covered in the webinar. For details on the products and the tools that you might potentially work on, it's really important to go to the report or the reports that are posted online. So I'm going to go ahead. Can I share my screen?
Yep, I'll go ahead and turn it to you, Cindy.
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So I believe you are seeing a copy of the report, and I've opened this up. This is last year's report, and I've just gone into the action groups. And the first action group that is reported here is the community participation and implementation science. And as you read through what they worked on, they talk about the themes that were of interest to the group. They had 6 themes. One was training and capacity building. One was promoting best practices, identifying approaches for a more prominent focus on centering health equity in engaged IS, strategies to address mistrust and history of negative experience, conflict management, and institutionalizing engaged IS. Under each of these, there is kind of a taste of what they're looking for. So for training and capacity building, you would need to know, has the work group already completed an inventory of engagement trainings? They were interested in developing or adapting online training for stakeholders. Those are products that could be developed. The products out of here include a wide range of different ideas that were generated. And one of the things that we realized is that the consortium, we asked people to identify what could be done, but there wasn't any funding associated with this. So this is a way for a very small amount of money to see if we can get some traction on that. So, you know, it might be a literature review, it might be recording some videos and making those available, things like that. So I hope that that answers that question. I'm going to stop sharing.
Cindy, can I just add on to that? I think what you're seeing in front of you again, for the first couple of years of the consortium activities, there was a lot that was anchored around that synchronous several days when we got together. And again, we'll be getting together again in the coming months. But what we are, of course, trying to do is make sure that this reflects ongoing efforts, that this gives opportunity to support those ongoing efforts. And so while it is absolutely a great thing to take a look at the two reports of those meetings, we really do want to encourage you to connect with the leads of the different action groups, because some of those ideas may have moved on and other ones that aren't reflected in the reports may have emerged as well. So this is a really great grounding, and I agree with Cindy that it's good to say, are some of these things, if they're of interest to you, already done or ongoing, but also great just to think about catching up to the conversations as they currently are, as opposed to just where they might have been in past years, if that makes sense.
Excellent, thanks, David. And that's where the Slack channel comes in handy, where you can engage in the Slack channel. We don't want to overwhelm the action group leads. They are volunteers as well, but being able to access it and see what has been done is really important. And Jennifer has added information on how to join the Slack or to request access to Slack in the chat.
Great, thank you, Cindy. So there's been some questions around the funding kind of mechanism for this, so to speak. So how would you describe current implementation science funding? I know that's one of the requirements of the eligibility.
So current implementation science funding would be, it's not training. We're really looking at research grants in implementation science. So the R's and the U mechanisms. We really want people working on this that are new to the field. They can be experienced investigators, but we don't want them having current research grants across NIH that are in implementation science. So we're really trying to give new people to the field and junior investigators, practitioners, an opportunity to engage. And that's why we also in the application encourage and want to see a mentoring plan. So if you're absolutely new, that you're trying to link with someone so that you understand what implementation science is and what you're getting into.
So a couple of clarifying questions off of that. So if you aren't currently funded under an IS funding, would other NCI funded investigators be able to apply if they're outside of the IS spectrum?
Yes.
And we also have some questions around kind of the engagement with an action group. So what does it mean to actively be engaged with an action group in the requirements?
Well, I think part of it stems from what David was talking about. These action groups, they're ongoing. It's not a point in time. If you haven't reached out and engaged with an action group, you have a month to learn about what are they doing and how you can work with them. If you've been participating with action group calls, it's an opportunity to take some of the ideas that you have already been discussing and think about ways that you could personally work on them to deliver a product, a tool that could be made publicly available. And publicly available might be a publication. So, you know, thinking along those lines, to become actively engaged with them, you need to not just read the report, but you need to understand what they're working on, reach out to Slack, see who's in the working group, see if there are people that you can talk with, learn from, correspond with via email, so that whatever you're proposing lines up with where they're at and it's not something that they've already completed.
Yeah, and I think that the answer you just gave addresses a few other questions we have regarding how to get involved in an action group. And I did put in the chat the email address ccis@icf.com. And please feel free to reach out to us and we can help you join that Slack channel if you are already not involved. And if you have any questions on how to use it, you can also email that address and we're happy to help you get started on that channel. So can an individual applicant engage a colleague as a partner or a colleague who has a consulting team?
I think that goes to the multiple applicants, where you can do linked applications. Personal services contracts are not a contract to an organization. So it's a personal services contract to a individual. If two people are going to work on a project, each of them need to have distinct contributions that they're making. And the total for a collaborative project is $20,000. So, it's wonderful. It's great to see that. But each of you would have to submit, you would need to let us know that they're linked, but you would have to submit them separately.
So a couple other questions that I do know that were addressed, but and maybe someone can, if you did ask this question, if you want to add it in some more detail, but what are the specific guidelines for the personal service contract applications? And I know we reviewed that, so if there is a further question involved in that, please let us know. And again, please feel free to reach out to the ccis@icf.com email address, and we can help kind of pinpoint some questions that you may specifically have. So Cindy, another question we have, do the tools created have to address implementation through one of the core areas in cancer specifically, or can it be something in IS and a policy area more broadly?
I think it really needs to look and coordinate with what the action group was identifying. Some of the items out of the action group weren't cancer specific. They were much broader than that, but it needs to be linked to what the action groups, had identified.
And then is there guidance you can provide around the types of budget items that would be appropriate?
I'm going to defer to Brandon on a personal services contract. What type of categories and items are appropriate?
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, I think for that, the way these are going to be set up are through time and materials contracts. So the PSCs will be time and material. And with that, you would want to provide the budget in milestone format, kind of how many hours it would take you to complete one milestone, and it would be invoiced in the same fashion.
Thank you. And I think it's important to know, these aren't going to the organization. The reason why we chose this mechanism was so that we weren't having to pay organizational overhead. If we did that, $20,000 would be less than $10,000. This is to individuals, and you need to work within your organization to meet whatever rules they have about you receiving a personal services contract. But this is to an individual.
So another individual is wondering whether this grant is for, or whether I should say this funding is for implementation science only in the field of cancer, or could it be more broad?
Again, I think I would defer. It has to be related to the products, the tools, the resources that have been identified in the action groups, because they can be very broad or they can be very cancer specific. It just needs to be tied in with the work of the action groups.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I'd say there is that as at least labeled as the overall consortium being around cancer implementation science, we recognize that there are public goods that are needed that are going to be of broader relevance than just for those of us working in the cancer space. That said, if it seemed like the interest was in focusing on implementation science in a very different area of health that is not linked back to cancer, that it wouldn't be as helpful.
So kind of going back to that action group tie-in, can we qualify if we have not yet participated in an action group? Could we qualify if we start engaging this month before the applications are due?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we're hoping that we accomplish with this funding, is to have broader engagement. So, reaching out, looking into Slack, and thinking about what you can contribute. Because you won't just be participating, whoever's funded, it will be engaging with what you're proposing now, but you'll also want to engage with that work group and at the consortium coming forward. And next year, you'll be presenting what you did.
So kind of and then going back to the personal service contracts and the definition, can an individual apply and work with a local partner, not part of the consortium, like a graphic designer? Also, if an individual is an LLC, can they apply through that individual company?
I'm going to defer to Brandon, but I believe it's a personal services contract to one individual. How they decide to use their funds is up to them, but it's funding, you know, 4 hours time.
Yep, Cindy's exactly right.
Perfect. And then we had a question come in of, can you provide more guidance in finding the public goods for global health? And I do want to direct people, I did put in the chat and I'm happy to put it in again. Looking back at the last 2 years of meetings that we've had, I know some of the 2019 work groups didn't make it into the 2020 and we had some additional ones that were included. So looking there, it would be a great start in kind of seeing what was generated from those meetings and then engaging in those Slack channels to see what other work has continued from the 2020 meeting before we get into the 2021 meeting, which will be taking place October 6th and 7th.
Exactly. And I think, you know, the report does have a lot, but again, that was at a moment in time. So it's important that you engage with the action group via Slack or with any of the members that are working in the action group to know what's already been done. So, you know, for global specifically, one of the tools or things that they wanted to work on was compiling trainings for international implementation science opportunities. And we had a person at NCI that was co-leading that, and that is done. So I don't know that we would want to pay for someone to recreate that. We've already compiled it. We've got a partner in CUGH that is going to be taking that and managing that. So it's really important to know what's been done. Otherwise, you could do a lot of work and have no way of getting funded because it's already been completed, and we will be kind of checking on that.
And then someone else is asking about, I know the application process asks for a CV and indicates that an NIH Biosketch cannot be used in lieu of a CV. Will the application require a Biosketch?
No. Correct, Brandon? I mean, PSCs, because this is really, because this is a contract. This is being issued by ICF, and we're looking for a resume or a CV, and we don't need a specific Biosketch.
And it seems there might be still some confusion on if an individual as an LLC or an SCorp, which is only for individuals, can they apply and be paid to that SCorp?
I'm going to defer to Brandon on that.
So from a contractual standpoint, that shouldn't be an issue, but it is also I think we need a little more information on that one, and we can get back to you in the facts.
Okay, so I think that kind of covers a lot of the questions that we have received. If there are other questions, I know funding and R01s, R03s, and R21s are probably the biggest avenue for getting funding, but these are for personal service contracts, so very different, very individualized. If you have questions as you go through the application process, please reach out to the ccis@icf.com email address. We're happy to direct your questions, whether or not it's through NCI answering those or ICF answering those. We're happy to help you along the way. And again, the application process will open on July 29th. An email announcement will go out once that opens, and the deadline to submit is September 2nd. We will be posting this webinar on the website, which should be available in the next week or so. So you'll have this for reference along with additional FAQs that will be posted there as well. If you haven't joined a Slack channel, again, please feel free to reach out to that email address in the chat, and we are happy to add you. And if you are already on the Slack channel, but just kind of looking to get some additional insight on how to join the different team sites that we have set up or the different channels, please, again, do not hesitate to contact us. With that, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing the proposals you submit. Thank you so much.